Greg Jarrett in for Shepard Smith. We begin today with breaking news. The feds releasing notes from their investigation into Hillary Clinton's private email setup, including details of the FBI's interview one-on-one with Hillary Clinton. Here are some of the highlights. Secretary Clinton never asked for permission to use a private server or email address while she was Secretary of State. However, Clinton also said she wasn't trying to sidestep any laws about federal records, that it was just a matter of convenience. She also turned down a State Department mail account when she began her job. Clinton told investigators everybody at the State Department knew she had a private email address and nobody ever raised any concerns. We're also learning that Clinton's team apparently had trouble keeping track of her many phones. In the report, Clinton aides said the secretary often replaced her BlackBerry and, quote, the whereabouts of Clinton's devices would frequently become unknown once she transitioned to a new device. In fact, one aide said a couple of times he destroyed phones by breaking them in half or hitting them with a hammer, the good old-fashioned way. Well, according to the FBI, Clinton told agents she could not recall receiving any emails she thought should not be on an unclassified system. Also, she could not remember every briefing she ever received during her transition out of office because of a concussion. After a year-long investigation, the FBI director said Clinton and her aides were extremely careless, but officials did not have the evidence to recommend criminal charges. We also just got reaction from Clinton's campaign spokesman, quote, while her use of a single email account was clearly a mistake and she has taken responsibility for it, these materials make clear why the Department of Justice believed there was no basis to move forward with this case. Catherine Herridge with the news now live in Washington. And Catherine, Clinton claims it seems that she really didn't know how the whole setup worked.
That's right, Greg. There were two documents that were released by the FBI this afternoon. The critical document is this document. It's called the 302. That's what the FBI calls a summary of an interview. The FBI does not traditionally record interviews. So in the Clinton case, that was also true, and there's no transcript. There's just this summary of the FBI agent's notes who questioned her. And consistently throughout the interview, Hillary Clinton says that she simply cannot recall when she got her security clearance. She cannot recall any specific training or briefing for the handling of classified information. And she cannot recall any specific training for the handling of special access programs. These are some of the U.S. government's most closely held intelligence programs, such as NSA technical programs and also human spying. And the other thing that really jumps out from this 302 summary is the fact that Mrs. Clinton said she used the account for convenience, but there was absolutely no follow-up from the agents about what that exactly meant, because we now understand that she had multiple devices, there were multiple servers, yet they don't press her on this issue. And this is one of the main criticisms of the Republicans who had read this document, and this criticism seems very well founded. I hesitate to be really critical of the FBI, but it feels like they were almost stenographers in this case and not really probing with their questions, Greg.
Yeah, you know, as a defense attorney, I got the same reaction. It sounded like they were reading from a script and they weren't paying attention to the answers because there were very few follow-ups. What about these special access programs?
Special access programs, as I mentioned, are really the crown jewels for the U.S. intelligence community. These are programs that are only known by a small circle of people, and the reason that's the case is because human lives are really on the line. And what we see in the FBI interview is that she is asked about the 22 top secret emails that were too damaging to release for national security reasons because they relate to these programs. So we can see their questions about target selection for the drone campaign. We can also see there's a question who was working for the CIA. This was a story first reported by Fox News. And we can also see that there's the discussion of a U.S. Army officer who was killed in Afghanistan, but a senior aide to Mrs. Clinton, or a longtime contact, essentially outed that person as someone who worked at the CIA after their death. and really effectively put that person's family at grave risk. It's shocking to me to see that that was in fact the case. And what I would add is that the document says she can't recall the briefings and the declarations she made to the government about how she understood she would handle this information in an appropriate way. And she signed 2 of these non-disclosure agreements within just a matter of days of becoming Secretary of State, confirming to the government under oath that she understood the rules. Yet when she was questioned by the FBI, she was able to walk away from that interview saying, I don't remember, I don't recall, I didn't know the rules. And it's very hard to look at this document and not really understand. One of the criticisms I have heard consistently from people who've had security clearances is that if you had slapped another name on that file, that person would be in jail and not running for President of the United States.
Catherine Harris, live in Washington. Catherine, thanks very much.
You're
All
welcome.
right, let's talk about it now with Jammu Green, former advisor on Hillary Clinton's 2008 campaign and a Fox News political analyst. Kristen Tate joins us, contributor to The Hill, author of Government Gone Wild. All right, I read through the 60 pages and I took notes. And what I wrote down the most is could not recall, was not aware, didn't think about it. I mean, over and over she seems, I hate to use the word, oblivious. And in fact, I'll be very specific. I sent these to the graphics department and we'll put them up on the screen. Here is her memory, which seems abysmal. Could not recall training on classified information. Catherine just mentioned that. Could not recall using your power to classify. Could not recall receiving emails that should not be on an unclassified system. Could not recall briefings she received when she left office because of her 2012 concussion. Kristen, defense attorneys always tell their clients, if you don't want to get charged, just say, I don't recall. And that's all over these 60 pages.
Oh yeah, it's just excuse after excuse from this woman. This is just being treated with a complete lack of seriousness by her. And it builds into this narrative that Hillary does not think the rules apply to her. And this is all coming out at a very inconvenient time for Hillary Clinton. You know, right now, 70% of Americans do not trust her. Only 41% of Americans view her favorably. And on top of that, Trump is coming out of a very, very strong week. I mean, some of the polls are even showing him ahead of Hillary. So this will keep these security scandals right on the front page, and I think this will hurt her.
She doesn't recall being trained on how to classify a document or recognize a classified document, and she couldn't give a single example of how to do it. My Lord, she's Secretary of State. Isn't that evidence of rank incompetence?
Well, I think what this is evidence of is exactly what the Clinton campaign said. They wanted these notes to be released. They did not want to have a drip drop of this coming out from Republican members of Congress who are giddy, like Kristen,
this
over
is coming from the
this.
FBI.
But the FBI that was lauded, the FBI director, who was just one of the most respected men until he said, we unanimously
you're
say that
deflecting my
we are
question.
not going to pursue prosecution.
Doesn't this demonstrate a lack of competence, that she doesn't know how to do something as basic as classify a document or recognize a classified document, and she's the top American diplomat who has to deal with it constantly?
Look, I think everyone understands that Hillary has said she would have done this differently if she had it to do it all over again. That's been addressed. What hasn't been addressed is the fact that Donald Trump sits on top of this complex business network, for-profit business network, and the same questions that have been asked of the Clintons for the last 20 years by the organization behind this are not being asked of him. How is he going to divest from his network when he is in debt hundreds of millions of dollars to the State Bank of China?
You're shifting it to Donald Trump, and I wanted to focus squarely.
There has to be an equal playing field here,
We've gone after Donald Trump on immigration consistently every day for the last 2 weeks, and I've certainly been a part of that. Let's be fair here and talk about Hillary Clinton's latest breaking news, her FBI interview. And let's put up on the screen the other part of my notes as I read these 60 pages of her interview. She seems profoundly uninformed, Kristen. She was not aware of hardware or software systems that she's dealing with on an hourly basis, was not aware of security concerns with private emails, Really? Could not give an example of classifying document, did not think about whether a military document on a drone being used should be classified. I mean, an 8th grader probably knows that, a military document is secret.
Yeah, it's amazing. But you know what else is crazy is of the things that the FBI released, some of these pages were redacted. There were pages missing, so we don't even know everything. It's incredible to me. But you know what? The unfortunate thing is that the media does not cover these scandals with the same sort of, sensationalism that they cover Trump's tweets with. So the American public
tax returns
will not.
What are in his tax returns? What is he hiding? How is he going to divest from owing the Bank of China $650 million?
Again, I'd
we know
like to
nothing
stay on
about
Clinton.
him and his business interests, but
this is the latest news on her, the emails, and it comes literally just hours, about 12 hours after we learned that people at the foundation contacted the State Department and asked them to engage in an illegal act by giving them diplomatic passports.
Greg,
let's put up on the screen. Let me put up on the screen. Let me finish. Put up on the screen the latest Fox News poll. And I wonder if this is simply baked into Hillary Clinton already. 66% of the voters think that it's likely that the Clintons are selling influence to foundation donors. How do you respond to that?
The former president of the United States went to North Korea because 2 of our journalists were being held by the North Koreans. And his team said,
so 66% of voters in America
these
are
diplomatic passports. But no, this needs to be clarified. He went there, he got them back. And guess what? They didn't even get the diplomatic passports because it wasn't necessary. Are we seriously sitting here and saying that he should not have taken that trip? He was not being a diplomat on behalf of those journalists.
Illegal for the foundation to ask the Clinton Secretary of State to provide documents which would be against the law.
Right, yeah. Clinton Foundation executives and donors had access to the State Department at the highest level. Everybody knows that. And, the AP revealed in a report that over half of Hillary's meetings that she had while she was Secretary of State were with Clinton Foundation donors.
The AP
this reeks of bribery.
The AP said that was wrong. Their tweet was wrong, but they refused to correct it.
People donated to the Clinton Foundation to curry favor.
You know what's going to be the headline?
She met with world leaders. Big deal.
The headline out of all of today's breaking news is going to be Hillary Clinton's concussion being used as an excuse for not being able to remember a great many things in the FBI interview. Jamu Green, Kristen Tate, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much.
We're going to have much more throughout this hour as our teams go through these newly released documents.